I just graduated with my PhD and I have some regrets. So today we are talking about if I were to do my PhD over, what I would do differently. The first thing that I would do differently, I think nobody ever tells you how important it is. I mean, you might hear it tangentially or somebody may allude to it or just say it, but not really explain why it's important or how it can help you. And that really simply is, if I were to do my PhD over, I would build more meaningful relationships. Now, of course, this isn't a foreign idea. Anybody who knows anything about business, the first thing they're gonna say, it's not what you know, it's who you know, or network, network, network. But this is academia, and I didn't really understand how that applies in this world of research and archives and publishing. And honestly, it comes up in a lot more ways than you may imagine. And so by making sure you are building out your community, I prefer the term community over network, but building out your network, your community to encompass people that actually care about you, your goals, and your research just turns out to make a world of difference in your success. And that's not to say that I don't have any meaningful relationships. In fact, it's quite the contrary. It's because of these meaningful relationships that I've created that I've learned just how important they can be. When it comes down to it, a lot of the opportunities that I've gotten post-grad is not just because I'm successful or just because my research is good. It's because I had people who were very interested in my success guide me through the application process, sit down with me and talk me through what is expected in a job search or a job application. Or just quite frankly, there have been people who have told people, hey, you should think about hiring her. Or hey, you should reach out to see if she would want to apply to this grant. And that type of community can really change how your post-grad experience plays out. I wouldn't necessarily imply that I would make everybody I meet my friend, because again, it's about meaningful relationships, but definitely having more people that are genuinely invested in me and me finding people that I genuinely want to be invested in, I think would have been invaluable to my graduate experience and better prepared me for post-grad. The next thing I would have did differently is a huge one, and that's I probably wouldn't have gone to UCLA. Now, yes, I know UCLA is so many people's dream schools, and honestly, on paper, it was a perfect program. But sometimes all that glitters is not gold, meaning sometimes things look good on paper, but it doesn't actually work out in that way. My experience at UCLA wasn't necessarily all rainbows and butterflies or just positive. And a big part of that was the type of research that I was interested in doing, the type of person that I am, didn't necessarily fit in well with the program that I was a part of. And so that is a reason why I have videos like this one, or like this one, where I talk a lot about the importance of making sure you're choosing the right program. And it comes down to all programs are not made equal, meaning a program can be the exact same program for 6 different people and maybe only 3 out of the 6 enjoy that process or will benefit from the pedagogy, the curriculum, or the support that they provide. And so for me, I wish I would have done or known to do deeper research on which graduate program that I go to, instead of just focusing on kind of very shallow, high level, not deep level investigations about a program. I wish I would have did deep dives into the curriculum, the faculty, the resources, the funding, and all of that jazz. And again, that's why I have videos like these that will be in the description box below, because I want you all to also avoid feeling like I did at year 3, year 4, year 5, when you start to notice like, wow, I actually really don't belong here. Which kind of is connected to the next thing that I would do different. I would apply to funding so much earlier. Yes, I have an entire funding playlist. Maybe every time that I mention funding, I talk about making sure that you are applying earlier, because man, that would have changed my entire life. in a positive way. So yes, maybe I wouldn't have gone to UCLA, but had I applied for funding, maybe all the things that made me feel insignificant, made me feel unstable, made me feel like my research didn't matter, would be a lot easier to deal with, because I wouldn't be afraid of becoming homeless, being hungry, not being able to pay my own bills. And so funding, applying for funding as soon as you can, actively looking for opportunities to make sure you're funding your research, your project, your education as much as possible, I think is so important. And bonus points if you can find a program that does that work for you or funds you. But if you can't, 100%, I wish I would have applied for funding so much earlier and been more aware of just how much funding can play a big role into my graduate experience. The next thing that I would change is actually a big reason as to why I made this YouTube channel. And it's because there was so much about academia and getting your PhD that I didn't know, and that impacted my timeline. And so if I were to do my PhD all over again, knowing everything that I know now, I would have taken my exams a year earlier. Exams are a huge part of a PhD process or a graduate school process. I even have an entire playlist that talks about exams, but I genuinely had no idea what exams were, how they worked, why you were doing them, or what they were like. And even though I would ask a ton of people different questions to try to figure out what they were, a lot of my responses, you'll figure it out when you do it, which was not very useful. But now that I know how exams work, I feel like I was more than ready to do my exams at the end of my coursework, which would have moved me a year ahead in my graduate process. But because I didn't know any better and nobody really explained to me what exams were and how they functioned, I felt like I needed to do what everybody else was doing, which was taking a whole year to do all of this reading and build all these lists and things to that nature. But it came down to it, because my classes were so related to my research, many of my lists would have just organically been made through my courses. I would have just read them, so they would have been fresh on my mind, and I would have been prepared to take exams. Now, this could be a future for you if you have yet taken your exams and you're trying to figure out when to do it. Again, you should check out this playlist. It's in the description box below. But that is something that would have saved me a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of stress. Speaking of stress, the next thing that I would have did differently is I would have done an additional year of research. Now, I don't know if you've been catching up or keeping up with my kind of journey through all of this, but I did field work for my PhD in Latin America. And I did about 8 months worth of field work in Latin America. But had I known better, if I were to do my PhD all over again, I would have tried to do a year in Brazil and a year in Mexico to just give myself time to not only do my research, but to write, go back into the field, think about things, talk to more people, and kind of get a feel of what's going on. Now, again, a lot of it was out of my control. We were in a pandemic lockdown, so traveling wasn't always accessible. Again, funding was a giant part of my limitations as a graduate student and being able to do research abroad. But I just think now that I'm on the other side, dissertation, published on ProQuest, it would have been really nice to have had the opportunity to spend a year or two in my case study regions, in my case study communities, to really get space and time to think through my ideas with the people that I was learning with or alongside or from in the institutions that I was writing about, instead of trying to get as much information as possible and then cobbling it all together on the way back home. And what's funny about all of this is now that I know all these things about a PhD, I feel so empowered in my ability to do it all again. But I absolutely would not. A PhD is a beautiful process. Getting your degree, being able to gain the skills that come with a doctoral degree is amazing. And I don't actually have any regrets about the degree itself, but rather small incremental things that have impacted my experiences. Now, if you're interested to hear more about my experiences as a PhD student, especially at UCLA's World Arts and Cultures Dance Department, then you should watch this video next. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.